to have you along for the ride. The Joe Pag Show. Great radio stations across the land. iHeartRadio, Newsmax TV. It is my pleasure on a Free Speech Friday. 1-800-383-9624, joepags.com. Plenty coming your way. An hour from now on the radio show, we will have Jeff Attica, Lieutenant Colonel. He is a terrorism expert, director for the Center for Terrorism Law at St. Mary's University. We've got the big anniversary coming up on Sunday where we commemorate the attacks of 9/11. And while some people are doing mattress sales, and I understand Walmart had some display, or one Walmart somewhere had a display out of Coca-Cola that depicted the Twin Towers too.
Yeah.
What the beep is wrong with people?
I
The heck are
don't
they
know.
thinking, man?
I know.
Want to welcome to the program. In the meantime, though, my good friend Dinesh D'Souza, movie maker, author, best-selling author many times over. The movie is Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. Dinesh, always a pleasure. How are you? Hey, Dinesh, you're on the air. What's happening? I don't have Dinesh. Well, there you go.
Oh.
I kind of hear like the phone is keyed, but we just might not have him. Tell you what we do. Let's go ahead and we'll drop the line on Dinesh, and when we come back, or when he calls back, we'll get him on. In the meantime, let me go to the phone lines and say hello and welcome to John, who is in Corpus Christi. John, what's going on? Hi.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
How are you doing after Gabby's back?
Not great. I got to tell you, it's been a process. I got a little bit of rest, and I feel a little bit better, but it's going to be a long process. The first and most important part was getting her back, and we do have her, and thank God. But I appreciate you asking.
That's great. Hey, I just wanted to make a quick comment about the Hillary Clinton email scandals and
Sure.
James Comey's stance on that.
Yeah.
From a law enforcement perspective on this, I've got a theory. My theory is that James Comey. Let me go out on a limb first of all and say I have not read the federal statute on what she might have violated for that, but I'm thinking he might not have had all of the elements of the crime that he needed to file the charges that were most publicized regarding her email. He probably had them, but proving them in court would have been too complicated and. It wouldn't have been worth it. And
I wholeheartedly disagree. I couldn't disagree more. In fact, he claimed there was intent in the federal law that he was citing, and intent is never mentioned. The only reason he didn't suggest charges, according to him, was that she didn't have the intent, which, by the way, she did. She had the intent when she made the server, but intent was not part of it. Unfortunately, hey, listen, I got to let you run here, John. I appreciate you. I've got Dinesh back on the line, and I've got to grab that. Let me go back to Dinesh D'Souza, movie maker, many times over best-selling author, and my good friend, Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. Dinesh, how are you?
Hey, Joe. It's good to be on the show.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I understand that you're doing a re-release. What does that mean?
Well, a re-release is a pretty rare event in movies. Basically, it's when the theaters decide that a movie is released, and yet it has a kind of a second wave. And I think what's happened here is that there's popular demand for the movie, and second of all, as we go into September, past Labor Day, the election is heating up. And in fact, there's Trump. He's all over the themes in the movie.
Yeah.
So the theaters decided, look, let's put the movie back into, so it's been in 400 theaters. It's in about 200 theaters now. It will actually fade down as the month goes along because the movie comes out in DVD around October 10th. And so we're excited to see the movie back in the theater. If you haven't seen it, I'd urge people to go, take friends, and then also look for the DVD a month from now. That'll be everywhere.
Now, people can, we're showing some of the trailer now. People can go to Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com. Can they still find out a theater near them there?
Yes. There's a whole bunch of theaters still playing the movie, and of course the book is in stores everywhere, and that's kind of the companion to the movie because it lays out the themes in even more detail. It's got a whole bunch of supporting references and footnotes that are obviously not in the movie, so it's a good companion to the movie.
Yeah. It's Dinesh D'Souza. The movie is Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. What's interesting about this is you learn so much about the party of Jim Crow, party of slavery, party of lynching, party of reservations for Native Americans, the party of the projects or the slums or Section 8, public housing for minorities, the party of eugenics and Planned Parenthood. And now in this day and age, we really have the Democratic Party trying to pretend that they're the party of enlightenment and the Republicans did all the bad deeds. I, yet again, the other day, Dinesh, had a guy on Twitter insisting that every Democrat switched to Republican and every Republican switched to Democrat. It was some sort of a come-to-Jesus miracle that happened overnight. What, again, is your response to people who say that big change happened?
Well, think about it, Joe, on the face of it. I mean, imagine if somebody were to say that, there was a day in 1972 when all the cops in the United States became robbers and all the robbers became cops. I mean, on the face of it, this would be ridiculous, right? But the fact is that when you look more closely, you see that there wasn't any such racial switch. Now, it is true that Southern Democrats, white Southern Democrats, did move toward the Republican Party in the 70s and 80s. But there is a one-word answer or two-word answer to why that happened: Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
It was Reagan's appeal to patriotism and free markets and traditional values and Christianity, and this attracted Southern voters who had been alienated by the fact that the Democratic Party had swung left in the McGovern era.
Yeah.
So this whole notion of a big racial switch, that the racist Democrats all became Republicans, this is complete nonsense and is, in fact, a way to cover up the real crimes of the Democratic Party.
Hillary's America, the movie. Go there, find a theater near you. The movie is being re-released. It's Hillary's America, the secret history of the Democratic Party. What's interesting is if you were to ask anybody, even people who are in academia, they really believe this, that the big switch of black voters voting Democrat happened in the 1960s, the early 1960s. It was because of the freedom marches and the equal opportunity that they wanted and weren't getting, and we needed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, and Rosa Parks took a stand. That's why black folks had to go Democrat, because Democrats had their back. You tell in the movie something that blew my mind. That actually happened a generation earlier or more.
Yes, I mean, remember in the 1960s, most people don't know that more Republicans proportionally voted for the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65 and the Fair Housing Bill of 68 than Democrats did. And the main opposition to the Civil Rights Movement came from the Democratic Party. Bull Connor, the Southern sheriff who unleashed dogs and hoses on the civil rights protesters, Democrat. Orville Faubus, the Arkansas governor who stood in the gates of the schoolhouse and blocked black kids from getting to school, Democrat. So there's this notion that the Democrats did the civil rights movement of the 60s, not true. Moreover, as you said, the switch of black votes came in the 30s. Now, what made this particularly ironic is that blacks were switching away from the party of Lincoln and emancipation and into the party that had segregation and the Ku Klux Klan. So why did they do it? There's only one answer. They did it because of the horrible economic conditions of the Great Depression. FDR promised them some actual tangible benefits, and they cut a Faustian bargain in which they switched parties to get those benefits, even though they were joining the party of the racists.
It is Dinesh D'Souza. Go get the book, because in the book, because a lot of people say, he can't back it up and there are no facts. In fact, well, in the movie they say that. In the book, you back it all up, you give all the references, and it's above reproach. I ask you this every time I talk with you. Has anybody in the media, and they're all against you, has anybody in the media, well, except people like me and people like, Newsmax TV and so on, and people like these great radio stations, but in the big media, they're against you, but the only argument they have is it's not made very well, or, boy, he really hates Hillary. They can't has anybody brought up a fact yet that you've had trouble verifying?
You know what, Joe? I'm actually still waiting. The nature of the rebuttals I get is, as you know, I mentioned in the movie that in 1860, the year of the Civil War, no Republicans owned slaves. All the slaves, and by the way, we're talking about 4 million slaves at the time, all owned by Democrats. Now, the kind of rebuttal I get is someone told me, Ulysses Grant, who led the Union armies, had a servant who was originally bequeathed to him as a slave. And that's actually true, but remember, at that time, Ulysses Grant was not a Republican. Ulysses Grant became a Republican later. So think about this. I'm making a spectacular claim about 4 million slaves. It's being rebutted by one guy, and even that one example, highly ambiguous, because when Ulysses Grant was a Republican, he did not have any slaves. So the point I'm trying to make is this is a movie that makes startling claims that are standing up against withering attack, and this is why when Trump attacks Hillary on these issues, there's no answer. When he says, you're the party of racism, racism, you're the party of slavery, you're the party of segregation. Notice that Hillary has gone into dead silence on that topic.
Well, she's gone into dead silence on almost everything. She shows up for Matt Lauer to ask her a couple of questions. And by the way, he did lob softball, which I found interesting. It's Dinesh D'Souza. It's Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com. Go there, find out where the theater is that's playing this movie near you. It's called Hillary's America, but I believe more of the movie is about the history of the party she represents. And you certainly get into why she acts like she does and does what she does and believes that she's somehow owed the power. When you watch this campaign, after the Republican convention, Trump had a little bit of a bump. After the Democratic convention, Hillary had a bigger bump, and then Trump got in the back and forth with the Khan family, and I think that hurt too. Now it's tied up, or he's leading a little bit, depending on which poll you look at. Did you predict the way this is going, that she would assume the vote of the Hispanics, the vote of the Native Americans, the vote of the blacks, and they would somehow try to make him to be the racist in the race?
I absolutely knew that was going to happen because that is the Democratic playbook. And in fact, it normally works. Normally what they do is they point the finger, they make the charge of bigotry, and quite frankly, had they made it against Romney or Bob Dole or McCain, you would see the Republicans go into their normal fetal position of ducking and avoiding the issue and trying to move on to something else. Not, to Trump's credit, he's shown a kind of bravery in hitting back on this issue that I find incredibly admirable. Not even Reagan confronted the issue with the kind of candor that Trump has shown so far in this race. So it's actually very interesting. In the movie, we do talk about the gangsterism of Hillary, which is, I think, her distinguishing feature. Makes her different even from Obama. At the end of the day, Obama's an ideologue, but Hillary is on the make and on the take.
Does she think that she's owed this, Dinesh? I mean, first of all, how does somebody like that rise? She needed Bill Clinton because of his savvy and his ability to sell you your own shirt off of your own back and then charge you double, and then you'd smile about it and you were happy that you had a beer with him. What is it that you found in her history that made her think she was entitled to all this power, control, and money?
Well, I think from a young age, we see with Hillary, she was corrupted by Saul Alinsky. Because remember, she started out as a Goldwater Republican, but she met Alinsky in high school. She became a fan, and she brought him to Wellesley College when she was a student there, later wrote her thesis on him. Now, the thing about Alinsky is that many people focus on Alinsky as a left-winger. He wrote this book, Rules for Radicals. But there's another side of Alinsky that we emphasize, and that is Alinsky, the sort of crook, the petty thief, the extortionist, the con artist. Alinsky, by the way, spent a lot of time hanging out with various Chicago gangs, culminating with the Al Capone gang, and that's where he learned, in a sense, the art of extortion. Now, it's quite remarkable that young Obama and young Hillary both found out about Alinsky. They realized that this is a guy who took mafia tactics and moved them into politics. He figured out a way politically to extract money from people, and they beat their way to Chicago to learn from the master. It all reminds me of Oliver Twist. Remember Fagin, the kind of pickpocket teaching the young guys how to do it? Yeah. It's ironic that this guy Alinsky has been the tutor both of Hillary and of Obama, the existing president and the aspiring next president.
And again, the last question, we've got to run here, and I really appreciate your time as always, my friend Dinesh D'Souza, Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com. Has the end game always just been power, control, and money, or was there ever a time, do you think, in Hillary and Bill Clinton's background where they really did want to do something for the better good and they thought they were doing something for the better good?
Well, I think a good analogy here, we have to go outside of America to Juan and Evita Perón. And these were guys who set up a foundation. They accumulated tens of millions of dollars. It was all for their own benefit. But they spun out an elaborate rhetoric about how they're doing this for the campesinos, they're doing this for the people, and so on. I think with Hillary and Bill, the same thing. They basically believe that they have the right to live like lords as long as there are lots of other people on the plantation that they are, quote, taking care of. What they never point out is that having those people on the plantation is their pretext for accumulating all this money and power that they do feel, I think, in a disgusting way entitled to.
I've seen it several times. It's an amazing movie. I was educated, and I'm somebody who pays attention. Dinesh, I can't thank you enough for the time. I can't thank you enough for the movie. And hopefully everybody's going to go out and find it now. I love that it's being re-released. It's just in time because this race is heating up, my friend. Love to Debbie, and we'll talk to you soon.
Terrific, Joe. Great to be on the show.
All right, thank you so much. Dinesh D'Souza, go there, check it out. Hillary's America, the movie.com. I think you put in your zip code, and then it will show you where the theater is showing this movie. It's an amazing education. Everything you think you knew, you might not. Keep it here. Back after this.